This is not your regular love story. This is the tale of a sugar baby who fell for the one man she was never meant to love, her sponsor's only son. A forbidden passion, a deadly choice, and a lie too dark to ever be forgotten. On this episode of Twisted Love Files, love didn't just cross the line, it buried it. The Lagos air, thick with the smell of car fumes and big dreams, always felt different when Brenda was around. She was beautiful, dressed in fancy clothes, and her laugh could charm anyone. Mr. Davies, a rich man with a big belly and even bigger pockets, had fallen completely for her. He gave her so many gifts: a new car, a nice apartment in Lekki, and enough money to make her wildest wishes come true. Brenda was his sugar baby, and she played the part perfectly. But deep down, under the expensive perfumes and fake smiles, Brenda had a secret. A quiet fight against the fancy cage she was in. That fight had a name: David. Mr. Davies' only son, David was nothing like his father. He was young and full of life, with eyes that promised a future far beyond just money. He was studying abroad, only home for holidays, but those visits were enough. Enough for quick looks, quiet talks on the balcony when Mr. Davies was napping, and the strong pull of something real, something dangerous. Their love was like a delicate, secret flower, growing in the shadows of Mr. Davies' huge house. David, at first just curious about his father's beautiful new woman, soon saw past the sugar baby label. He saw Brenda, the smart, funny woman who wanted more than just things. He listened to her dreams, shared his own, and slowly, without meaning to, they fell in love. A love as strong as it was wrong. The day David came home from London for good, the tension in the Davies household was clear. Mr. Davies, happy and unaware, talked about future business plans for David, while Brenda and David shared looks full of unspoken desire and fear. They knew their secret couldn't stay a secret for long. The air was heavy with the feeling of a coming storm. That evening, they had a big dinner to celebrate David's return. Mr. Davies, cheerful and a bit too loud after many glasses of expensive wine, raised a toast to his son, then to the two most important people in my life. He pointed first to David, then, with a hand gesture that showed he owned her, to Brenda. It was a simple move, but for Brenda and David, it felt like a stab. For Mr. Davies to publicly call Brenda his woman, right in front of the man she truly loved, was too humiliating. Later that night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Brenda lay in her fancy bed, the soft sheets feeling like a burial cloth. Her mind raced, replaying the dinner, Mr. Davies' words, David's hurt face. She felt trapped, choked by the golden chains of her arrangement. She had to escape, not just for herself, but for the love she shared with David. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a soft thud from Mr. Davies' office downstairs. Brenda's heart jumped. Was it David? Had he decided to confront his father? A cold fear spread through her. She slipped out of bed, her bare feet silent on the shiny marble floors, and tiptoed towards the office. The door was slightly open, a thin line of light shining into the dark hallway. Brenda pushed it open slowly, holding her breath. The sight that met her was a nightmare. Mr. Davies lay fallen over his large wooden desk, a fancy bronze statue lying next to his hand. His eyes, usually so full of life, were now empty, staring up at the ceiling. And standing over him, his face pale and twisted with a mix of fear and sadness, was David. A gasp escaped Brenda's lips. David's head shot up, his eyes meeting hers. In them she saw the truth, clear and shocking. He hadn't just fallen in love with his father's sugar baby. He had, in a desperate moment of strong emotion, killed the man who stood in their way. The love story, once sweet and secret, had taken a dark and lasting turn. The air, once thick with the smell of big dreams, now smelled of fear, guilt, and the chilling end of a life. What would they do now? And could their forbidden love survive this terrible crime? Brenda's mind raced, a chaotic storm of fear and a strange, cold clarity. David, her love, had killed his father. The blood on Mr. Davies' shirt was a stark, horrifying stain against the polished wood of the desk. David, Brenda whispered. her voice barely a breath. "What have you done?" David looked at her, his eyes wide and vacant, like a man who had just woken from a terrible dream. He said he'd never let us be together. He said he'd ruin you. I couldn't let him." His words tumbled out, a mix of raw confession and desperate justification. He was trembling, a fine shake that ran through his whole body. Brenda knew they had only minutes, maybe seconds, before someone discovered the body. The house staff would wake up. The driver would be back in the morning. They couldn't call the police. Not now. Not ever. "We have to think," Brenda said, her voice firmer than she felt. Her mind, usually so focused on survival, was now consumed by a desperate need to protect David, to protect their impossible love. "No one saw you come in here, did they?" David shook his head, still dazed. "I don't think so. I waited until everyone was asleep." Brenda scanned the room quickly. The bronze statue, the obvious weapon, lay near Mr. Davies' hand. "You touched it with your bare hands, didn't you?" A nod. "Yes. I picked it up." "Okay," Brenda said, her thoughts flying. "Gloves. We need gloves. Anything to wipe prints." She spotted a cleaning cloth on a nearby shelf, used for dusting the expensive artwork. "And we need to make it look like something else. A robbery gone wrong." David stared at her, a flicker of understanding, then terror returning to his eyes. "A robbery?" "Yes." Brenda grabbed the cloth, her hands surprisingly steady. "They don't know about us. They'll just think someone broke in." She began wiping the statue, then the desk, trying to erase every trace of David's touch. "We need to mess up the place, make it look like a struggle. Take some things, money, jewelry. Make it convincing." David, though still in shock, moved to obey. He pulled open drawers, scattering papers, and grabbed a few wads of cash from Mr. Davies' wallet. Brenda, meanwhile, was strategically moving furniture, tipping over a lamp, creating a scene of forced entry and chaos. Her heart hammered, but her mind worked quickly, fueled by adrenaline and a terrifying new purpose. "The window," Brenda said, pointing. "Break it from the outside. Make it look like that's how they came in." David hesitated. "But what about the body?" "We leave it for now," Brenda decided, her voice chillingly calm. "The police will think it was a robbery. They'll focus on finding the thieves." She knew the local police investigations could sometimes be less thorough than in other places, especially if the initial clues pointed away from the family. They needed to create a strong enough story. They worked in a frantic, silent dance. David slipped out, and a few minutes later, Brenda heard the sharp crack of glass from outside. He re-entered through the main door, his face streaked with dirt and a new layer of fear. "What now?" David asked, his voice hoarse. Brenda looked at the dead man, then at the trembling son. "We act surprised. We call the police in the morning, as soon as it's discovered, and we stick to the story no matter what." The rising sun began to paint the sky with hues of orange and pink, a beautiful dawn breaking over a house stained with a dark secret. Brenda and David huddled together, their faces masks of shock they hoped to master. The sugar baby who fell in love, and the sponsor's son who killed for it. Their forbidden love now bound by a terrible, shared crime. They had just taken the first step into a future that was anything but sweet. The suspense wasn't just about discovery. It was about living with the lie, day after day, in a city that knew how to keep its secrets, but also how to expose them. The first hint of dawn, a faint gray against the Lagos sky, brought with it a chilling new reality. Brenda and David, their eyes hollow from a sleepless night, finally made their move. Brenda, with a practiced air of frantic concern, discovered the shattered window in Mr. Davies' study. Her scream, sharp and piercing, ripped through the quiet morning, pulling the household staff from their sleep. Pandemonium erupted. Houseboys rushed in, maids wailed, and the driver, Mr. Obi, immediately called the police. Brenda held on to David, openly weeping into his shoulder, playing the part of the grieving girlfriend. David, pale and trembling, managed to look suitably shocked and distraught, his arm tight around Brenda. When the police arrived, The scene was exactly as Brenda had orchestrated. The ransacked room, the broken window, the missing valuables, all screamed, robbery gone wrong. The bronze statue, now carefully wiped clean by Brenda's frantic hands, was identified as the likely murder weapon. The police, accustomed to such incidents in wealthy neighborhoods, began their investigation, meticulously collecting evidence, questioning staff, and taking statements. Brenda and David were questioned separately, then together. They stuck to their story with unwavering precision. They had heard nothing, seen nothing. They had been asleep in their respective rooms. Brenda sobbed about how kind Mr. Davies had been to her, how he had given her a new life. David spoke of his father with respect and sorrow, lamenting the senseless violence. No one suspected the depths of their betrayal or the dark secret that bound them. Days turned into weeks. The police investigation slowly wound down, eventually concluding that it was indeed a professional robbery that had ended in tragedy. A few low-level criminals were rounded up for unrelated offenses, and while the killer was never truly found, the official story provided a sense of closure. Life in the Davies household, though forever changed, began to settle into a new, uneasy rhythm. Brenda stayed by David's side, a constant source of comfort. Their grief, though faked for the public, was very real in its own way, a grief for the life they had destroyed and for the innocence they had lost. They moved through their days, haunted by the ghost of Mr. Davies and the chilling memory of that night. Their stolen moments of affection were now tinged with the bitter taste of blood and deceit. Their love, once passionate and defiant, was now a heavy chain. Every shared glance, every whispered word, was a reminder of the secret they carried. They had achieved their freedom from Mr. Davies, but at an unbearable cost. The luxury of the Lagos mansion, once a gilded cage, now felt like a prison built of guilt and fear. Brenda and David had gotten away with murder. They were free to love each other, to build a future together, free from Mr. Davies' control. But the freedom they had bought with such a terrible price came with unseen chains. The constant fear of discovery, the lingering shadows of their crime, and the silent understanding of what they had done to secure their love would forever bind them. They would live their lives together, wealthy and seemingly carefree, but always looking over their shoulders, always wondering if the past would one day catch up. The sugar baby who fell in love with her sponsor's son had gotten her fairy tale, but it was a dark one, forever stained with the blood of a man who had simply wanted to be loved. Their love, born of passion and sealed in murder, would be their eternal bond and their eternal punishment. They thought they had escaped, that their love, once forbidden, was now free. But the truth has a way of crawling back, especially in a city like Lagos. Brenda and David got their happily ever after. But at what cost? In the end, some love stories don't end in weddings. They end in whispers, shadows, and blood. This was Twisted Love Files, where passion meets darkness, and the heart never leaves clean. Thanks for watching.